Welcome to the deep dive. You know AI is everywhere these days, and that's exactly what we're diving into today, especially all the buzz and anxieties around it.
Right. It feels like it's all anyone's talking about.
Exactly, and chances are you're here because you're feeling that too. You want to get ahead of the curve.
Absolutely.
So to really wrap our heads around it all, we're going to take a deep dive into John's interview on the Rommel podcast.
Oh, yeah. That was a great interview.
It really was. He shared some pretty thought-provoking predictions about the future with AI.
Some might even say unsettling.
For sure. He really gets into how AI is changing things.
And not just like the tech itself, but how it might impact our lives.
Our culture, our society,
Or
everything.
Exactly. Like he paints this really vivid picture of AI's growth, comparing it to a car speeding towards a cliff.
While the scenery just keeps getting more and more beautiful.
That's such a striking image. It really captures how things are moving so fast.
Almost like it's a little out of control.
Yeah. And John argues that the speed is only increasing.
He's not wrong. Things are changing so rapidly.
He points to the evolution of GPT, the tech behind tools like ChatGPT.
That's the one everyone's talking about.
Exactly. He said GPT 3.5, the first widely available version, was like an elementary school student.
Okay, I can see that.
Then GPT-4, the current version, is like a high schooler, getting things done.
More capable.
Much more. But GPT-5, that's where it gets really mind-blowing.
That's the next iteration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says it'll be like having a PhD at your fingertips.
Wow.
Not just one PhD, though. Think an expert in every field imaginable.
So like every subject you could ever want to know about.
Instantly.
That's a huge leap.
Exactly. And John believes this level of advancement is coming sooner than we think.
That's kind of scary.
It is a little scary.
Yeah.
But it's also exciting. Think about it. Instant access to expertise in any subject.
You could revolutionize anything.
Everything, from research to education to how we make decisions.
Okay, that's incredible. But it also brings up a pretty big question. What happens to our jobs?
If AI can do everything we can, but better, John doesn't shy away from that question. At all. In fact, he believes AI will probably take all our jobs eventually.
Wow. Really? All of them?
He seems to think so. What's uncertain is the timeline.
That's a bit unsettling.
It is. But he makes a good point. He stresses that the real challenge isn't just about AI doing the work.
It's about how our world adapts.
Exactly. It's more about how our economic models need to change.
So it's less about robots stealing our jobs.
Right.
And more about figuring out how we live in a world where work looks very different.
Yeah. And John suggests a pretty radical solution. Universal Basic Income, or UBI.
UBI. That's where everyone gets a regular payment from the government, whether they work or not.
Exactly. It's meant to provide a safety net in a world where traditional jobs might become scarce.
Huh. That's a fascinating concept.
It is, but it's also incredibly complex.
Absolutely. It brings up so many questions about how we value work, how we structure our society, even what it means to be productive.
Definitely. Big questions. And you know, it's interesting. John actually shared a pretty personal story about all this.
Oh, really?
He confessed that when he first grasped the potential impact of AI, he almost bought a horse farm.
He was going to escape to the country.
Basically. It seems like even someone so deeply immersed in AI can feel overwhelmed by it.
I totally get that. It's like wanting to go back to a simpler time.
I know, right? But ultimately, John decided against the horse farm.
So did he come up with another plan?
He chose to embrace AI, to ride the wave, so to speak.
Huh. That's a pretty bold stance.
It is. He must be optimistic about the possibilities.
Yeah, if he's willing to dive in head first like that.
Definitely,
Then
he
yeah.
is. But he's also pragmatic. He argues that learning to use AI tools is crucial for staying competitive.
That makes sense in any field.
Exactly. He sees it as the key to thriving in this new world.
So we can't just bury our heads in the sand.
Nope. We need to lean in and learn the language of AI.
It's like learning any new language. The better you speak it, the more you'll be able to navigate this new landscape.
Exactly. And you know, it's interesting. He observed that most companies aren't using AI to replace workers entirely, at least not yet.
Oh, so it's not all doom and gloom.
Not necessarily. They're mostly using it to get ahead
To become more efficient.
and outcompete rivals.
So for now, it's less about robots taking our jobs.
Right.
And more about companies using AI to get ahead.
Yeah. But that still raises concerns about power.
Absolutely. Like who's really in control?
John's particularly worried about tech giants like Google, Meta, Apple,
They're already so powerful.
and he believes governments might have to step in. as these companies become even more intertwined with our lives.
Wow. It's like they're becoming more powerful than nations.
That's what John's suggesting. Think about it. These companies are already embedded in our daily lives.
They control so much, the information we see, the products we buy, how we communicate.
Exactly. And with AI becoming even more central, their influence is only going to grow. John even suggested these companies could eventually become more powerful than nation-states.
Wow.
He pointed to Apple's integration of ChatGPT into its devices as a prime example.
Millions of people are using it.
Right. They have access to this powerful AI tool through their iPhones and Macs.
So Apple's essentially shaping how we interact with AI.
Exactly.
It's brilliant. But it also makes you wonder, what happens when our AI is so ingrained that switching to a competitor feels impossible?
That's a good question. What happens to competition and innovation?
It's almost like we become trapped.
It's a real concern.
Yeah.
And it brings up important questions about data ownership control and the need for a level playing field.
So are we headed for a future dominated by a few tech giants?
That's what we need to figure out.
Hmm.
Some experts are even calling for a global regulatory body.
Like a UN Council for AI.
Exactly. To address these ethical challenges.
That's a big step.
It shows how seriously people are taking this issue.
We need to find solutions.
Absolutely. We can't just let these companies write the rules of the game.
And speaking of rules, John's interview also touched on the potential downsides of AI, like deepfakes.
Oh yeah, that's a scary one.
Incredibly realistic, but completely fabricated videos or audio recordings.
All created using AI.
It's like reality itself is being manipulated.
Right. And John shared a pretty unsettling story about receiving a robocall with an AI-generated voice of President Biden.
No way.
It was so convincing that it really shook him up.
That's freaky. So it was a fake call.
Totally.
Yeah.
But it highlights the threat these technologies pose.
To our ability to tell truth from fiction.
Exactly. And John's story perfectly illustrates the potential for deepfakes to spread misinformation, manipulate elections, sow chaos.
It's like a weapon of mass deception.
In a way.
Yeah.
And it makes you wonder, will we ever be able to fully trust what we see and hear again?
It's a chilling thought. John even suggested establishing code words with loved ones.
To verify their identity in phone calls.
Yeah, it sounds like something out of a spy movie.
It's both practical advice and a pretty dystopian image.
It really is. But it shows how deepfakes are forcing us to rethink our basic assumptions about trust.
Our whole reality is shifting.
It's almost like we need a whole new set of rules for navigating this world where anything can be faked.
Absolutely. We're going to have to adapt.
And fast. Because the technology isn't slowing down.
Not at all. If anything, it's accelerating.
We'll delve into those ideas more in part 2, right after this.
It's wild to think about, right? Like, we could be talking to someone on the phone and have no idea if it's really them.
It's a whole new level of paranoia.
But John's not just focused on the problems. He's thinking about solutions, too. Like watermarking AI-generated content.
So we could tell if something's a deepfake.
Exactly. It's like a label that says, hey, this isn't real.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And are there any other ideas being tossed around?
He also believes in stronger laws for creating and distributing deepfakes.
Especially if they're used to harm someone.
Exactly. Like intentionally spreading misinformation or damaging someone's reputation.
Right now, there aren't many laws about deepfakes.
Not really. It's such a new technology. The law is always playing catch-up.
We need to get ahead of this before things get out of hand.
Definitely. But beyond deepfakes, John also touched on some even bigger ethical questions about AI in general. Like, he asked this question that really stuck with me. Who gave these people permission to change the world?
That's a good question. It's like this whole technological revolution is happening so fast.
And with very little public debate.
It's like we're all being swept along. But did anyone ask if we wanted to go?
It's a valid point. We're all passengers on this train. But who's driving?
That's a bit scary, actually.
It can be. But while acknowledging the potential dangers, John doesn't think we should reject AI altogether.
So he's not completely anti-AI.
Not at all. He actually sees potential for good.
So it's not all doom and gloom.
No, he's calling for a balanced approach, recognizing both the risks and the rewards.
I like that. It's not about blindly accepting or rejecting technology.
Exactly. It's about understanding it and using it responsibly.
So how do we prepare for a world where AI is so deeply embedded in our lives?
John's advice is pretty simple. Learn to use it.
Become fluent in AI.
Exactly. Understand its capabilities and limitations. And find ways to integrate it into your work and life.
It's like with any new technology. The more comfortable we are with it, the better we can use it to our advantage.
He also emphasized that most businesses aren't planning to replace everyone with AI.
At least not right away.
They're more interested in using it to enhance human capabilities
To make their employees more efficient.
and productive.
So it's less about AI taking over and more about humans and AI working together.
Exactly. That's a much more positive outlook.
It is, but it still requires us to adapt.
Definitely. John said that those who resist AI risk being left behind.
It's like the Industrial Revolution all over again.
Exactly. Those who adapted thrived. Those who clung to the old ways struggled.
It's a reminder that change is constant, and we need to embrace it.
And John actually thinks AI has the potential to level the playing field.
Oh, so?
It could give smaller companies and individuals the tools to compete with larger entities.
So it could democratize access to resources.
In a way,
Yeah.
he used his photography business as an example. He spent years building his reputation, investing in expensive equipment,
But now someone with the right AI tools could create similar work.
much faster,
Right.
and potentially for less money.
It's disruptive.
For sure. But John doesn't see it as a threat. He sees it as an opportunity
To push himself to be even more creative.
and innovative.
That's a great mindset. Instead of fearing change, he's using it to fuel his own growth.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But he's also not naive about the potential downsides, like the growing power of those tech giants.
Google, Meta, Apple.
He predicts they could become even more influential than governments.
Wow. That's a scary thought.
It is. He thinks they might try to dictate the rules of the game.
And we just have to play along.
That's the concern. Many experts think these companies need more regulation.
To prevent them from becoming too dominant.
Exactly. It raises a lot of questions about choice and control.
Will we even have a say in which AI we use in the future?
That's a big one. What happens to our privacy?
It's all connected.
Right. And think about Apple. They've already seamlessly integrated ChatGPT into their devices.
It's become the default AI assistant for millions.
And that kind of dominance could shape the entire AI landscape.
So do we need global regulations
John believes it's inevitable,
to ensure a level playing field?
and to prevent these companies from becoming too powerful.
It's like the Wild West out there right now.
In a way, we need some rules of the road.
To make sure AI is used for good.
John actually compared it to international treaties governing nuclear weapons.
Wow, that's serious.
It shows how high the stakes are.
We're talking about potentially world-altering technology.
Exactly. But can we even agree on those rules?
Different countries have different values.
That's a challenge. John pointed out that Europe is taking a much more cautious approach to AI than the US or China,
So we could end up with a fragmented AI landscape.
with different regions developing and using AI in very different ways.
That sounds messy.
It could be, and it could create ethical dilemmas.
Not to mention practical challenges.
Imagine a world where your AI assistant works differently depending on where you travel.
That would be confusing.
And it could give certain countries a big advantage in the AI race.
Like, who controls the best AI?
Exactly. John used a really striking phrase to describe this. He said, "We're becoming clients, while the US and China are becoming suppliers."
So we're at risk of becoming dependent on other countries for AI.
That's his concern. It could have huge implications, not just for our economies, but for our societies and our values.
Oh, so what's the solution?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
But John believes that international cooperation is key
To establish some kind of global framework for AI.
to ensure that it benefits all of humanity, not just a select few.
It's a big task.
Huge. But it's essential if we want to avoid a future where AI divides us rather than unites us.
So despite all the concerns, John is still optimistic about AI.
Oh, absolutely. He's excited about the potential applications.
Like what?
He envisions a future where AI is everywhere. In our homes, our workplaces, our entertainment.
Even our bodies.
He talked about AI-powered wearables that enhance our senses.
Like smart glasses that translate languages in real time.
Or health trackers that predict potential health issues.
It's like science fiction becoming reality.
And some of it is already happening. Think about the explosion of AI wearables in the past year.
It's mind-boggling how fast things are changing.
John even predicted that Black Friday 2024 might be a tipping point for mass adoption.
And he was right. Those AI-powered glasses are flying off the shelves.
People are eager to try this stuff out.
It's like a whole new world is opening up.
And John believes this is just the beginning.
Mm.
He said that the AI we have today is the worst it will ever be.
So it's only going to get better.
More powerful, more capable, more integrated into our lives.
It's a bit overwhelming to think about all the possibilities.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting.
It feels like we're on the cusp of something huge.
like a technological revolution.
That could change everything.
We can't predict the future, but we can prepare for it.
By understanding the potential and the risks.
And by having these conversations.
Exactly. That's what we're trying to do here on the deep dive.
To explore these complex issues and help people make sense of it all.
Because AI is here to stay.
And it's going to impact all of us.
So we better start figuring out how to live with it.
And how to shape it. To create a future that benefits everyone.
Now that's a lot to absorb. And frankly, kind of frightening. Maybe we need to hear from John about how to actually prepare for this AI-powered future.
It would be great to hear his personal insights.
Yeah.
Like what he's doing to adapt.
Yeah.
Like how does someone like John, an AI expert, actually deal with all this?
Well, he actually shared a pretty funny story about that. He said when he first realized how big AI was going to be, he almost bought a horse farm.
To escape it all.
Seriously. I guess even the experts feel overwhelmed sometimes.
It makes you feel a little better. No, you're not alone.
Right. Like it's not just me who wants to run off and hide from all this tech.
Exactly.
Right.
But John ultimately decided to face his fears.
Instead of becoming a horse farmer.
He realized that ignoring the problem wouldn't make it go away.
So he chose to dive in head first.
Yeah. He's all about turning anxiety into action.
I like that. It's like taking control of the situation.
Instead of letting it control you.
So what did he do? How did he adapt?
Well, he talked about how the education system needs to change. Like, big time.
What do you mean?
He said memorizing facts and figures is basically pointless now.
Because AI can do that for us.
In a split second. So what's the point of cramming our brains full of information?
Right. It's not about what you know anymore. It's about how you learn.
Exactly. John thinks education should focus on critical thinking, problem-solving creativity.
Those are the skills AI can't replicate.
At least not yet. Those are uniquely human abilities.
But isn't that already what education is supposed to be about?
In theory.
Right.
But in practice, it often feels like we're still stuck in the old model.
The rote memorization model.
Exactly. We're preparing kids for a world that no longer exists.
So we need to evolve our approach.
Absolutely. And John also talked about the importance of social and emotional intelligence.
EQ instead of IQ.
Exactly. As AI takes over more tasks, the ability to connect with others, to build relationships, to understand human emotions, those skills are going to be even more valuable.
So it's like we need to double down on what makes us human.
Our empathy, our compassion, our ability to relate to each other.
Those are the things AI can't replicate.
And those are the things that will set us apart in the future.
So it's not just about learning new technical skills.
That's about developing ourselves as humans.
That's a really important point.
But John also talked about the bigger picture,
Yeah.
like the need for global action.
To address the challenges of AI.
He believes government regulation is going to happen, whether we like it or not.
So it's not about if, it's about how.
Exactly. And he's not a fan of heavy-handed approaches that could stifle innovation.
So find a balance between protecting people and promoting progress.
Right. He's all about finding that sweet spot.
But how do we even begin to create global regulations for something as complex as AI?
It's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
But he stressed the importance of international cooperation.
To establish some kind of global standards.
For AI ethics and governance.
It's like with climate change. We need everyone on board.
Otherwise, it's just going to be a patchwork of different rules and regulation.
Which could create more problems than it solves.
John's particularly worried about an AI arms race.
With different countries competing to develop the most powerful AI.
It could destabilize the whole world.
So we need to work together.
To ensure that AI is used for good, not for harm.
It's a tall order, but it's essential. If we want to avoid a future where AI divides us.
Instead of uniting us.
So after this deep dive into AI, I'm left with a lot of questions and a mix of excitement and anxiety.
I know. It's a lot to process.
It's like we're on the verge of something truly transformative.
But we're not sure if it's going to be utopia or dystopia.
Maybe it's a bit of both.
Probably. But one thing's for sure, we can't just sit back and watch it happen.
We need to be active participants.
We need to learn to adapt, to engage in these conversations.
And then most importantly, we need to start asking ourselves some tough questions.
Like what kind of future we want to create.
And how we're going to use this incredible technology to shape that future.
Because ultimately, the future is in our hands.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking.
And maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.